This is fascinating because you're talking about a form of separation and segregation in architectural style. But tell me how your work as an architect has moved to overcome some of that, and how it's related to the architecture that could be designed for other forms of disability.
Yeah, as you mentioned, deaf schools and other types of disability share very similar architectural lineages. Oftentimes are designed by the same individuals and architects, the same agencies. So oftentimes you will see, oh, here's a good for instance, schools for the deaf and a state hospital and then a state prison in the same city or designed by the same architect or designed in the same style. You start to see this overlapping layers of how our society defines disability and how our society sees the investment and commitment of the state to serve disabled people early on as a symbol of civic value. So these institutions were constructed and built to promote a sense of civic pride, societal virtues, and there's an intended to inspire general confidence. But what's really interesting is these buildings, these ornate facilities, they are beautiful, but these buildings were not necessarily designed to the sensory experience of deaf and hard of hearing users. We depend on visual networks, sightlines, and being able to see each other to communicate in a classroom and outside of the classroom. Oftentimes you would see deaf people who sign that gather in a circle or semicircular shape. They can all see each other when talking. However, at the same time, a classroom was not designed to accommodate that style and that, increasing that space to meet in a circular format, to help to accommodate matching that sign language needs. Classrooms were quite small in size. They didn't fit. The lighting wasn't ideal. The glare was harsh and backlighting was strong, making a very visually exhausting environment to look and watch all day long as you're watching communication. It's exhausting. So these sort of things in terms of design and design flaws did not match the sensory experience of deaf and hard of hearing users that we're seeing in space. What's really interesting is I had an opportunity to really explore and research and visit over 60 schools for the deaf throughout North America. And I started to notice a very large radical binary between schools that were designed by the state for deaf people in comparison. There were schools that were either designed by deaf architects or from a deaf person's perspective. Enormous difference. The state design was very rigid, controlled, and domineering structures, large, ornate. In comparison, school design from or by the deaf were more organic, comfortable, ideal in terms of daylight, diffusion, accommodating for how deaf people gather in space.